This Unity thing's a bigger problem than you think. Gamers are a contentious people. As a result, it's no surprise, really, that there's been a furious response among gamers to the company behind the familiar game engine Unity's recent announcement that starting in 2024, the developers of any game using their engine would be charged an installation fee. That is, they'd suddenly have to pay Unity up to 20 cents for every time a user installed one of their Unity-based games, and in some cases, this would even apply to multiple installations of the same game by the same gamer on the same system. That's on top of the standard Unity membership costs they're paying already, by the way. If you know anything at all about the games industry, you'll know this is bad news for devs and for players, and most gamers have realized this, have erupted in vociferous opposition to Unity's news. Lots of attention has been directed toward dev responses, to the dubious legality of this, to the fact that as a result, Unity's impending legal battles are likely to fall in the hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby vein, and to the seeming evidence of insider trading surrounding the announcement. But there's been less of a focus on putting this move into context. And there is some context here that needs discussing, because yes, this probably won't work. Unity will likely either roll this back in the face of legal pressure, get destroyed in court, or simply wither and die after a dev exodus. This won't work. Unity isn't nearly a big enough player to normalize such a shift. But I guarantee you, the big boys are taking note. This won't work, but eventually, some variation of this probably will. A lot of the videos and memes referencing Unity's announcement call the fee a tax.
Honestly, that's what it is. It's a new tax on every install.
But not all of them. Some are calling it rent, and the use of that term may just point to the real issue here, the shadowy force that looms near unseen behind concerns of insider trading and legal challenges. Let's talk about techno-feudalism. The biggest taxi provider in the world owns no taxis. The biggest hotel provider owns no property. Uber, Airbnb, and every other one of those apps, the apps that link workers to people looking to buy their labor and take a fat cut of the transaction, of every transaction, didn't end up being the first steps towards the so-called sharing economy, as was suggested once upon a time. They were, instead, the first signs of something, well, greedier. Uber, Instacart, Alibaba, Airbnb, Seamless, Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, these companies are indescribably thin layers that sit on top of vast supply systems, where the costs are, and interface with a huge number of people, where the money is. There is no better business to be in. The interface layer is where all the value and profit is. Tom Goodwin wrote that for TechCrunch in 2015. He wasn't the only one to figure this out. Douglas Rushkoff, in his book Survival of the Richest, writes, "Entrepreneurship today has less to do with innovating a product than innovating on the business model for growth." He calls this going meta. As Cody Doctorow writes, "Today people don't aspire to create value, they aspire to capture it." That's a quote from an article by Doctorow entitled Auto-Enshittification, in which various fairly nightmarish examples of this value capturing are given. The BMW that would charge you to use the seat warmer, the Mercedes that would rent you the accelerator, the Russian-captured Ukrainian tractors which the tractor company remotely bricked. Yes, very based move, but the fact that this was possible is worrying and telling. As any economist, sociologist, or r/196 user will gladly tell you, we're currently living under a capitalist hegemony. That's the dominant social and economic order of the day. But before capitalism, at least in Europe, that spot was taken by a system called feudalism. To ruthlessly simplify, feudalism wasn't about markets, wasn't about selling new products, reinvesting your profits, all that. It was about rent. Per Doctorow, a rent is income that you get from owning something that other people need to produce value. Thus, the feudal landlord, whose peasants worked his land and paid him for the privilege of living there and doing so. Not that, they had a choice. But things changed. Doctorow continues, "The first capitalists hated rent. The quote free market of Adam Smith wasn't a market that was free from regulation, it was a market free from rents." Indeed, John Locke's ideal landowning system was so opposed to the rent-driven feudalism of his day that Bertrand Russell suggests it represented a nearly socialistic outlook. Today, orthodox capitalist economists still draw a distinction between reasonable, productive profit and excessive, exploitative profit, referred to as economic rent. If that seems like a somewhat arbitrary distinction, yes it is, but at least within the mythology of capitalism, the capitalist doesn't seek money for nothing. The capitalist is trading, developing, innovating, generating profit. The rentier simply sits back and collects it. The thing is, most businessmen don't really care about that mythology, or about what Adam Smith said so many hundred years ago. Money for nothing sounds like a pretty good deal to them. It sounds nice and easy. And, well, it's getting easier. Thanks to today's technology, they can sell you headphones that disable if your membership lapses. Want to get creative online? You can't buy a permanent Adobe license. You have to keep paying those dues forever. Buy a car and pay extra for premium functionality. What do you get when you cross rent-seeking with the cloud? Well, I mean, I already said it a few minutes ago, didn't I? You get techno-feudalism. Techno-feudalism is many things. It's a young concept. It was invoked primarily in reference to the data-selling digital infrastructure giants like Facebook and Twitter by figures like Shoshana Zuboff and Cedric Durand, but recently writers like Yanis Varoufakis and the aforementioned Doctorow have been using the idea in a bit of a wider sense, picturing a vast, new, or, new-ish economic structure poised to disrupt capitalism itself. But at its widest, it's very simple. As the name suggests, techno-feudalism is digitally facilitated rent-seeking. It's a revival of the perpetual, ownership-based income model of the Middle Ages by way of the microchip. Per Doctorow, under techno-feudalism, control comes from rents, owning things, not profits, selling things. It's the stacking of thin layers, Facebook, Google, Airbnb on top of vast systems, in order to siphon off as much more as possible. It's leveraging the inescapable infrastructure of the internet to supercharge going meta, innovating on the business model, that is, digitally padding the monetization system, rather than innovating on the thing itself. So whereas a traditional capitalist would develop a cheaper or more effective insulin pump, a techno-feudalist would just digitally lock your pump into only working with their inevitably pricier insulin. Whereas a traditional capitalist would build a better wheelchair, a techno-feudalist would use DRM to restrict anyone but their in-house technicians from fixing your broken one. Whereas a traditional capitalist would focus on improving their game engine, a techno-feudalist would simply slap on an installation fee. The Unity debacle isn't nearly the first run-in gaming has had with the principles of techno-feudalism. After all, as suggested above, DRM is fairly central to many techno-feudal practices, but it is perhaps the most naked example of this digital rent-seeking we've seen in a while. It's a gossamer layer of greed interposed meaninglessly between workers, their means of production, and their ability to sell that work, with no purpose but to scrape, and no reason except because we can. Unity are becoming software rentiers. In the gaming community, the change has been seen very clearly for what it is: transparent, unadulterated avarice, an entirely one-sided attempt to squeeze developers for more gold coins. But what hasn't been seen so clearly is what the Unity debacle represents: an initial sortie onto the field of gaming by this post-capitalist, techno-feudalist vanguard. This plan didn't appear spontaneously in the Unity offices. It's the result of a cultural and economic shift boiling away in the background of the online business world. That isn't being seen, but really, that's no surprise. H-Bomberguy's video on Control-Alt-Delete discusses webcomics, loss, and The Room before it makes its big point, or at least the point which stuck with me the most.
Even the most intelligent, well-paid, popular, and verbose writers gaming culture has to offer seem unaware that these decisions are not made in a vacuum, that games are threatened not by a secretive anti-art coward, but by an environment that systematically crushes most of the people who work on them in order to make its owners and shareholders vastly rich, and which has no interest in anything's intrinsic value. Gaming culture is largely unable to conceive of this level of socioeconomic criticism, of analysis of systemic problems and wider issues with society beyond one person's individual failings, and therefore cannot accurately fathom exactly what is damaging the things they love.
That was a long clip to insert, but it's a crucial point, one I think H-Bomberguy really hit the nail on the head with. One of gaming culture's biggest flaws is its persistent inability to conceive of itself as conditioned by, contingent on, larger material and cultural factors, to recognize that games, gamers, and gaming, none of these exist in a bubble. They exist in the world. They are shaped by that world, and by the social, political, and economic trends of the world. The problem here isn't just the greedy executive's personal failings. This isn't happening because the Unity CEO is anti-dev, or anti-gamer, or hates art. It's happening because the economic environment of neoliberalism and the resultant business culture of going meta, of capturing value, has given rise to a new generation of parasitic, rent-seeking executives, and because the technological advancements of recent years have made it easier than ever before to enforce predatory practices. Technofeudalism is bigger than Unity's CEO. The Unity pricing debacle is a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself. And so even if Unity gets curb-stomped by the combined legal might of Nintendo, Microsoft, and everyone else, even if the policy is rolled back, this isn't going to be the last attempt at rent-seeking in gaming, at implementing techno-feudalist systems to the detriment of dev and player alike. But it will be the last attempt at doing this so overtly. More hidden, more feasible efforts will follow. Whatever happens with Unity, that danger grows. The Unity problem came from businessmen, not devs. It came from outside gaming's cultural bubble because the walls of that bubble do not exist. As a result of that non-existence, gaming is just as much a target for capitalist and post-capitalist exploitation, for techno-feudalism and all its twisted siblings, as anything else. But the corollary of the fact that the world's issues can reach gaming is that its solutions can too. If there is a way to thwart those inevitable, less overt follow-ups to Unity's predatory pricing plan, it'll only come when gamers stop thinking in terms of greed and evil executives and singularly awful Unity CEOs, and start thinking in terms of systems, materialism, and of a gaming which exists in the world, in our world, and is enmeshed in the same socio-economic frameworks as everything else. I can't tell you how to do that, not here, but I can tell you where to start. This video relies heavily on the work of others, particularly Cody Doctorow, whose site is a must-read, which I've linked below, and whose recent book, The Internet Con, is a fantastic look into possible solutions. And also Tom Nicholas, whose recent, also linked video on grifting is essential viewing. I've also linked everything I referenced or read for this video. And do make sure to check out Yanis Varoufakis' upcoming book on techno-feudalism. I know I will. There's also links to my Patreon and YouTube membership system down there, so if you want to help provide some much needed support for videos like these, I'd be super grateful. You get a bunch of cool perks, including special thanks when a video ends, like this one's doing right now. So yeah, big thanks to all of you guys on screen now, especially Daniel Goldhorn, Karen Kuhlman, Magath, Ryan Emily, Something Capitalism Bad, Thomas R, and Weirdy Beardy. Coughing baby that like button, do check out those links below, drop a comment, a share maybe, and I'll see you all soon.